President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed the political party funding bill into law, but the IEC will only be able to effect the law in April, a month before elections. The bill was passed by Parliament and sent to the President to sign in June last year. In the same month, the Constitutional Court ruled that voters do have the right to know who is bankrolling political parties. Now, My Vote Counts is one of the organizations that lobbied for the bill. Researcher Zahira Grimwood joins us now from Cape Town. Good evening, Zahira. Thanks very much for your time. Now, your organization campaigned quite vigorously for this. Are you happy that it's been signed into law finally?
We are ecstatic that it's been signed into law. Of course, we welcome the signing of this bill into law, but of course it's taken a very long time. It's not just My Vote Counts that has been campaigning for this bill to be signed. There have been various civil society organizations that have come together and have requested that there be some form of legislation prior to the bill being initiated in Parliament. As people who have been following this would know, that the bill was only formulated in 2016, and it quickly went through Parliament, and we feared after the pressure we were putting on for the President to sign it last year that it wouldn't get signed, because the deadline for it to be effective before the elections was November as of last year, and now it's as we've heard, that IEC would only be able to put it in effect by April, but that we would still have to know then what is the amount of information that they will be able to retrieve, and if it means that they can put it in effect by that time, would it mean that they'd actually release the information, or they just start working on it. So yes, we welcome the signing of this bill. I'd also just like to mention that this bill is not necessarily a panacea to end corruption when it comes to the private funding of political parties. But prior to this bill being signed, there was no enacted legislation that actually allows for one to access information on political parties' private funding. So this bill will enhance transparency and accountability, particularly in the private funding regime, and it will give South Africans a chance to monitor the private funding that political parties receive. It would allow for the media and for all South Africans to be able to raise any red flags if this information is disclosed, because the bill will allow for the information to be disclosed on a quarterly basis, and then we would be able to consistently monitor political parties' private funding that they receive from this bill.
In fact, which brings me to my next question, because I would imagine, as with any other law, and especially on the back of the stuff coming out of the State Capture Commission, this law alone won't necessarily deter, some of the brazen criminals within political parties who easily circumvent or ignore the laws of the land.
Yes, it's not a panacea, as I mentioned, and as you can see with when it comes to the Commission, the way that BZASA allocated money to certain politicians and members of the ANC was by providing cash, which would be then could be regarded as underground funding if the bill was in place. If there was some legislation in place, in that case, that nature of giving over funding would be regarded as underground funding, and the bill wouldn't be able to monitor or root out such cases. So political parties may find creative ways then to further conceal private funding, but this bill is a step in the right direction. And I can mention the fact that we've heard from a source that I cannot disclose, and that in the lead up to November last year, with the deadline before the bill could be, the bill had to be signed, there were politicians that were very anxious that this bill was going to be signed. And one thing I think is also important to mention is with the Commission, you see that the ANC is essentially on trial But now with the bill being signed, this can allow for then there to be scrutiny of other political parties, because it's not just the ANC, it's all political parties that are able to have access to governance and influence over how our communities are governed, that can easily be influenced by private funders who would want to be able to influence these political parties for their own benefit.
Okay, that is where we're going to leave it for this evening. Thank you very much for your time.